Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jaeger Bishop. And yes, it is time for another political video. The game, obviously, enough that we're going to be playing today, is Destroy All Humans 2.
Comrade agents, thank you for coming. Here's what we know so far. 10 years.
And I'm just gonna mute this because actually I'll be back when this stops playing. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today was the Berkly free speech talks that were supposed to happen. More specifically, how it's blindingly obvious they were censored. And that, quite honestly, what's so ironic about UCA Berkeley, especially, is because of the fact that it was actually once the spearhead of the civil rights movement back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and now it's the head of a censorship push, which, yeah, just think about that for a second. Anyway, so, yes, the free speech talks were a dumpster fire, pretty much, and not in any part on the speaker's behalf, because of the fact that the speakers were there to be civil and everything, just that the people, not so much. And what I mean by that is that there were restrictions put on the people who were going to attend, the people who were going to speak, that were so freaking ludicrous. I mean, you can even look this up. I'll even, you couldn't have anything. You couldn't have a PA system, you couldn't have cameras, you couldn't have microphones, anything like that. So, what ended up happening was that some of the people, like Sargon Akkad, went outside and ended up arguing with some of the people out there. There was at this point that they were arguing for communism, because, of course, that's what people do these days, because they're idiots. No, seriously, you look up all the casualties of war that you, the casualties of people who have been under communist regimes or socialist regimes, such as Stalin, Mao, Castro, all those kind of people. And yes, even Che Guevara. And it is just a damn dumpster fire. It really is. What happened? Because the fact that when confronted about their beliefs, these people, they just resort to mantras like sexist, racist, anti-gay, blah blah blah, something something, like fucking drones, okay? And that's not a conversation. That's just admitting, okay, well, I have no argument, so I'm just gonna rant and rave about this and that or other thing, and supposed, how should I say, supposed oppression, and all that. Okay? Just make shit up as I go along, basically. Is what they decided to do. Like when Sargon pointed out that there are millions upon millions of people who died under communism. One guy said, oh yeah, well, what about the 10 million people who die every day? 10 million children who die every day due to capitalism. And then he asked for, a citation. And what happened? He just hands the fucking microphone off to somebody who goes on in drone speak. At that point, you've officially lost the argument. And of course, because of the restrictions of the speaking event, he didn't have a microphone of his own. So, actually, nobody did. So, yeah, that's what happened. Now, the other thing to talk about, which is actually pretty related, is Antifa. And how supposedly they are the proponents of free speech and all this other stuff. Free speech, freedom, yada yada yada. That they're fighting against fascists while using the very same tactics as the fascists themselves would have. There's a good reason that they've been labeled a terrorist organization, because that's what they do. They commit violence in the name of furthering a political agenda, namely communism. And don't think for a second that this is the first time Antifa have been around. This is not a new thing. Look up Antifa back in the 60s in Italy. I believe it was the 30s and 40s in Italy. Or was it the 60s? I can't remember exactly when. But they have a very long history. And the idea that this whole torching thing, setting things on fire, breaking things, destroying monuments, trying to erase history and everything. Come on. This is not new. Okay, none of this is. And it's gonna get fucking worse. It really is. But for some reason, Antifa are being supported around, like campuses amongst the youth as, well, basically that they're the good guys, that they're fighting against fascism. Yeah, just let that sink in. They're using fascist tactics to fight fascism. You don't fight fire with fire. And then there's people that say, well, it's justified because this, that, and the other thing. You only use violence when you've completely either A, lost the argument, or B, people have shut you down to the point. This constantly happens, where anybody who has a conservative or even just moderate opinion will get shut down. They can't speak, they get lied and slandered about and told they're Hitler and shit like that. Seriously? You can't tell me with a straight face, well, you probably could, and I would call it bullshit on it, that you can use fascist tactics while fighting fascism. Yeah. It doesn't make any damn sense to me. It really doesn't. And it's not even so much the problem of their ideals. It's just the fact the way they go about them. I mean, fine. You have communist ideals. I think you're naive, sure, but you have the right to speak. The point when you start, how should I say, the point when you start using violence to enforce your ideals, yeah, that's the point you do. That's when you've crossed into fascistic territory. That's when you crossed into the territory of being a terrorist. And these people are being supported. I mean, it's being taught in these colleges and universities that, being a violent thug in the name of communism, basically, is the way to go. Which is bullshit. And not only that, they fucking dox people. I mean, you speak out against these people, you get fucking doxed. They call into your work or call your friends, family, neighbors, whatever. Hey, did you know this guy's a fascist? I mean, that pisses me off to no end. It's like, oh, you're a little bitch who can't actually win any arguments. Like, your arguments cannot stand on their own merit, so you resort to destroying somebody else's life in order to get what you want. Fuck you. Seriously, fuck you. That pisses me off to no end, okay? And people like Antifa and these people that support them, they typically, what they'll do is one thing that Joseph Goebbels, who was actually, what was that, the propagandist minister for the Nazi Party, way back when a certain lunatic decided to run the asylum. He said, accuse your opponents of what you're guilty of and shame them for it until they believe they are the guilty party. That's exactly what they do. That's exactly what Antifa does. That's what the people who support them do. They guilt people into saying that other people are silencing others. That you're silencing them. That you're trying to silence them, you're trying to oppress them, you're trying to be the bully. Meanwhile, they're the ones doxing you, swatting you, trying to destroy your life, and basically just being... they're being the very monster that they claim to be fighting against. Which... that... yeah, and honestly, the reactions from especially like the youth and other people, I mean, realize that these are not all poor people, okay, that have these screwball views on the world, okay? Most of these people are middle class kids in college that have never had to do probably even a real day's work in their lives. Okay? And I can actually say this with authority because of their answers when they're questioned on their beliefs. That, oh, well, we should be able to define the line between hate speech and free speech. I personally hate the whole hate speech thing. I know, it's kind of ironic. But this whole thing where it's like, oh, well, you can't say that, that's hate speech. Anything could be classified as hate speech these days. It's so vague, it's impossible to nail down. Typically, what hate speech is inconvenient truths, is what I find. Like, when you talk about history of warriors, why there are typically more men who are warriors, especially in, times when there were, like, the Bronze Age and Steel and Knights and all that stuff. Well, men were typically actually stronger and better suited for combat. Oh, you're sexist against women? You don't think that they can be warriors? That's the kind of bullshit I get. That's the kind of bullshit that I hear. No, I'm simply stating a fact in the context of the evidence that's presented. Men are naturally stronger than women. Get over it. Men are naturally more fit for combat. Why? Because that's the way we evolved. Men went out and fought off things like predators and all this other crazy shit and had to go hunt for food way back when. And the women took care of the kids. And, negotiated, or the woman took care of the home, the man went out, got the money, got the food, fought off predators, everything. Like that. And it's not sexist, it's called biology. And if you say, and if I read or hear somebody say biology is sexist, I seriously cannot even fathom how retarded you have to be, or just not retarded. That's a stupid thing to say. Yeah, stupid. How stupid or just arrogant you have to be to claim something is sexist just because you don't agree with it. Or it's misogynistic just because you don't agree with it. Or it's racist because you don't agree with it. Or use any other ad hominem attack buzzword, anything besides an argument. Which is what most people do these days anyway. In lieu of having any real scientific fact to back up their claims, they just shame people. That's it. At that point, you gotta tell someone to just go fuck themselves. Honestly, you do. Because you can't argue with stupid people. They'll drag you down. They really will. Like, this shit has gotta stop. It really does. So, in summary, what I am saying is that, for the most part, what is happening is that only one side of the conversation is being allowed. The side that everybody already agreed, that the left already agrees with. And that any voice against it needs to be silenced, crushed, squashed, and shamed by any means necessary. And it's defended to the death by just drones. Like, people with absolutely No real arguments of their own. They just spout the same mantras all the time. And that's why things just never go anywhere. I mean, I suppose the one thing to leave on is the whole situation surrounding the statues getting torn down and destroyed. That, to me, it's infuriating for a number of reasons. One, I'm a very big proponent of preserving history. And I don't give a fuck if it's fascistic. Hell, I even like collecting, or should I say, hell, I'm even a fan of preserving actual symbols of the actual Nazi party. Why? So we can be reminded where we come from. And where we probably do not want to go again. But you know what? Everybody wants to repeat the mistakes of the past. It was once said by John F. Kennedy that those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolutions inevitable. Think about that next time you consider why tearing down a statue or silencing an opinion you don't like is a good idea. Because people like me, we would love to just talk this out and address all the problems. But the people who want to fight, the people that are basically being held back like hellhounds at this point, once things boil over, it's going to be a damn bloodbath. I would like to avoid that. I really would. Until next time, I'm the Jaeger Bishop. And remember, free speech for all. Have a good day.